here only because you were aiding others.
The original Watchers, too, were selfish. They wanted the knowledge for its own sake, not as a tool to be used. And that attitude triggered the virus.
Uh-oh, the beacon's getting ready to guide us someplace. But where?
Seems to me there's only one way to find out.
Peace. Now it's the vibrate. Y'all know what it is. Something very interesting, like an interesting realization just came to me. And I realized, like, you know, how powerful, you know what I'm saying, one's word magic, protection magic, you know what I'm saying, your spiritual moat that you create around yourself, in essence, could be. And, you know, again, for one, realizing, you know, or speaking into existence like, hey, I have no enemies, you know what I'm saying? But what's funny about it, like, I just kind of had the realization of, like, you know, why some people who are meant to be ambiguous and confusing, you know, could be so helpful to me upon my journey in a genuine helpful way, in the sense of, like, you know, actually telling me things, saying things and doing things that actually would really help me upon my journey, you know. And it's, for one, speaking into existence that I have no enemies. Another part to it is, you know, like casting a spell of protection that only the truth, you know, and clarity could exist within my physical being and auric field. You know what I'm saying? Therefore, when you come across some people who meant to be ambiguous and confusing, they have no choice but to be clear and tell the truth to you. Now, because ultimately they really are meant to confuse you, in essence. I don't say meant to, but like they're meant to try to cause confusion in some way, form, or fashion, whether they doing it deliberately or whether they doing it, you know, subconsciously, you know what I'm saying? They still end up saying a lot of things or doing things that could really be helpful to where you're going. Now, of course, in the midst of that, you know, you may get some of those ambiguous statements that's meant to kind of be a reflection of, you know, because literally, like, when you come across ambiguous, let's just say ambiguous people, or people that seem like they're trying to confuse you, it's a reflection of your doubt of your own intuition. You know what I'm saying? And again, yeah, you know, things are a reflection of your subconscious, but all reflections of your subconscious is not in alignment, in essence, with, you know, helping you. It's not in alignment with your intuition. It's more of a reflection of the parts of your subconscious that is toxic subconscious programming. You know what I'm saying? So yes, because again, we hear the word reflection and it's referred to in a lollipop, butterflies. All reflections are, you know, the most divine thing for you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, no, not necessarily. You got to have some form of intuitive discernment, you know what I'm saying, in your experience to understand, like, all right, what is this reflecting, or what is, you know, what is this person, place, or thing reflecting, and why are they, you know what I'm saying, in my experience, you know what I'm saying? But again, like, you know, your spell work could be so strong at, you know, again, like creating like this bubble of truth internally and externally, to the point where, again, even beings that may be, you know, trying to be ambiguous in some way, forms, or fashions, end up being very helpful to you. You know what I'm saying? And then I realized, with this energy, the longer you stay, like, so say for instance, you come across a being that really in essence is trying to be ambiguous in some way, form, or fashion, whether they're consciously aware of it or they're doing it subconsciously. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not to say all ambiguous figures. Now, again, when we look at it from a multi-dimensional level, you know, like, yeah, it might be in another dimension that person is somebody that's, you know, in essence, for lack of a better word, coming to be like a, you know, let's just say an antagonist. You know what I'm saying? But on a human level, you know what I'm saying, in this dimension, just this dimension by itself, in the sense of our human seeing with our two eyes, and, you know, from that point of view, you know, it's not coming off as something, you know, deliberately ambiguous. But anyway, the longer you stay around them, so you're in conversation with them, at the beginning stages of that conversation is when the truth, you know, is going to unfold. But and this is in alignment with you doubting your intuition as well. What I'm about to say is that you come across this ambiguous figure, this figure meant to, you know, figure, being, person, whatever, you know, that's there to confuse you. When you're on point intuitively, you could sense it, and you know, like, all right, I don't even need to be talking to this person for a long time. Let me, you know, bam, say what I gotta say, do what I gotta do, and move around, you know. But when you go to doubting your intuition and doubting that what you're picking up on is real, you end up talking to them longer than you need to. And because first internally, you're sticking around talking to them longer than you need to, aka you're starting to doubt your intuition, or, you know, that action within itself is a reflection of you doubting your intuition. Then that's when the confusing stuff starts to come out, you know what I'm saying? Because at that point, you know, your actions basically kind of, you could say your actions, by sticking around or staying too long in that conversation, your actions negate your spell of only the truth could exist, you know, or only clarity could exist, for example, you know, that end up negating itself through your actions of doubting your intuition and staying around that person longer than necessary. And this is real. This is a new, you know, getting into the in between nitty gritty nuances of, you know, experiences, like the whole experience again of the internal external realm again, and that whole, you know, reflection and everything, the reflection type of energy, you know. Because I feel like if it's not looked at from this deep level, then, you know, you're not really looking at it truthfully, you know what I'm saying? Because to say, oh, everything is all a good reflection, you know, that's not a healthy way to look at it. And if you say everything is all a bad reflection, that's not a healthy way to look at it. You got to see how, you know, the good and the bad of the reflections, you know, come into your experience. And we say good and bad, for lack of a better word, you know, things that are healthy for you and things that are toxic for you. You know what I'm saying? Because yes, you could learn from, you know, a toxic thing, you know, and that's where the paradox come in. You know, yes, you could learn from someone who's in essence meant to be toxic towards your soul mission. You know, yeah, you could be like, oh, well, you know, that was a great experience because I got to learn, what I don't like. You could kind of have that perspective of, oh, well, this toxic situation is helping me. You know what I'm saying? But ultimately, it's toxic, yeah, for you to learn to not stay around or be in it, and yes, positive situations or things that come off is healthy, what I'm saying, could also be something that is, unhealthy. When I think of like comfort zones, like, oh, this feels good, this feels comfortable, but it's comfortable and feels good in a toxic manner because it's like preventing you from growing, because it's a comfort zone that isn't, necessarily healthy. So although it comes off as this feels good and this seems healthy, it may be toxic for you. So, that's the parody of, toxic things and healthy things, and again, like some may say, like, this is me expressing things what I'm just wired to pay attention to or wired to see. So this doesn't necessarily mean to try to force yourself to dive this deep into, understanding. It's not necessary for you to have to dive this deep into these types of nuances of, reflections, but, again, this can help at just understanding that dynamic, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like some who have gotten into a space where, it's confusing and you're trying to figure out like, all right, what's reflecting, the healthy aspects of my soul or my soul mission, and what's reflecting, something that's actually ambiguous and confusing and distracting from my soul mission. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of us have possibly put ourselves in spaces where it's kind of tough to see or figure out or navigate through, your inner world and outer world, and understanding, again, like the whole reflection dynamic, but again, as I'm explaining all this, this doesn't mean that you have to, because I could hear somebody now like, oh, that's too much, or that's confusing. Well, it's not for you. And for one, again, what I'm expressing is not for you. And two, as I'm expressing it, again, everybody doesn't have to force themselves to dive deep into this nuance. This is me expressing this nuance because this is a gift of mine. I could see this shit. I see the layers of this experience, or that whole reflective experience and subconscious experience in connection with our external experience. I could, I see it very well, you know what I'm saying? Like, without having to force myself to study it, you know what I'm saying? It's not like I'm having to sit long hours with a pencil and paper and really, it's like, no, this shit just shows up. And that's, again, how what's your gifts and not, you know what I'm saying? So yes, if you do feel like, oh man, that's, well, more so from a perspective of like, like this is a deep dive, or this is, something that doesn't come natural to me. Yeah, don't force yourself to try to have to, go that deep. But if you're in situations, or you have been in situations, and most likely if you listen to this video, in some way, again, like you may be experiencing, confusion in understanding, your inner world and outer world, and what your intuition and your soul alignment and what's not, in your internal and external experience. So just wanted to share that, you know what I'm saying, fully and holistically. But yeah, what I've shared so far is enough for you to understand. But again, just start from the beginning again, bringing it full circle. like me noticing that, all right. But especially the part, again, was the most important aspect of this nuance, is the connection with, like, doubting your fear. I mean, excuse me, doubting your intuition, and again, you cast that spell of only truth and clarity could exist in my experience. I have no enemies. And again, the universe is like, yes, well, only truth and clarity exist in your physical being and auric field, and you don't have any enemies. So therefore, people, again, that may be antagonists actually end up helping you in some way, form, or fashion. But again, the nuance of it, what you need to see or understand in those moments is, all right, when you pick up on that feeling, early, before even the conversation start, that this something feels a little funny or off, trust that and know, like, all right, I don't need to be in this conversation for too long. Because otherwise, when you go to doubting your intuitive feeling that tells you that you don't need to stay in this conversation for long, or this, or this is meant for a little momentary relationship or a little momentary exchange, and then I got to go about my business. If you don't pay attention to that feeling, to that intuitive, nudge, then, you realize that things, all right, the conversation starts to go a little left or feels a little off, because you first and foremost start, the whole reason why you're even allowing that conversation to go longer than what it is need, or you're allowing the exchange or experience to go longer than necessary with this person, is because you're doubting your intuition. You know what I'm saying? And because you're doing that internally, then now reflectively, externally, you know what I'm saying, you start to hear the antagonizing, ambiguous statements, you know what I'm saying, they could come through now, because you again negate your own protective spell of truth and clarity from ignoring your intuition and staying longer than necessary. Bam. Point blank, period. Now's the vibrate. Not too far in the future, not too far in the past right now. Peace.